Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt Sanctuary.
Are we live or not? Okay, we're live here at the Teddy Roosevelt gravesite. We'll have to walk 100 yards east, as the sign says.
Uphill. Let's go.
That's a sign to the 26th President's gravesite. And I believe I see it from here, ladies and gentlemen. If you can see, there's a gate over there. And that is where behind that gate, a large gravestone, very plain, but almost as big as an adult, I believe, by looking at pictures, lies Edith Wilson, and our 26th president, who became president when William McKinley was shot and killed. There is a giant flagpole, and over there should be where he is buried. Okay, here we are at the bottom of the steps of the gravesite of Teddy Roosevelt. Now you can see the gate where the grave is, if you could not have seen it before. Here is a picture of the flag-draped coffin in January 8th, 1919, when his funeral was held here. It was a very cold day. You can see the flag-draped coffin, just as lately you may have seen the flag-draped coffin at President Ronald Reagan's funeral the past month or so. Let us travel up the stairs.
And what a coincidence. Here comes your mother and sister coming down.
Dada, we're going to try your charms with the caretaker.
In there. Okay, here we are traveling up the steps. It's not as big as I've seen in pictures, but here we are behind the gates. This is one grave that they do not let you in, though. They don't let you in the gates. Oh. It is big, though, as you can see. In the middle is where Theodore and Edith are buried. I'll give you a minute to read the inscription. And also, after you're done reading the inscription, you see a metal, looks like a palm tree leaf, under the marker. You can see the eagle in the middle of it. Very plain but big. Nothing like the Ulysses S. Grant gravesite in Manhattan. This is in Oyster Bay, New York, on Long Island. A mere hour or so after we were in Manhattan, let us travel around to the side. We're going up the steps and testing. We shall see the back of the grave. Nothing on it, merely, but You can see the red, white, and blue wreath in the middle of where they are buried. These are probably the president's children.
We'll have to look it up for sure.
We'll have to look it up for sure. Tomorrow, we will be at his 5th cousin's gravesite, Franklin Roosevelt. Time? Don't know when. Library and home. Place? Hyde Park, New York. In front of the grave, behind the gate. See you tomorrow at President FDR's grave, and also his wife's, and you want to say it, Olivia?
Fala, doggy.
Okay.
Which is the greatest part.
Okay. Bye. See you tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
Scratch his nose.
We gonna get
So those are your initials, huh? $1 an hour.
So these are 26.
26.
The very first one, the flush one. That
Okay.
was higher, but now I retop this, every 5 years.
Was Teddy the 26th president?
How about that?
That's right.
That would have been my guess. Just doing a little math.
How about that?
With their 26 steps.
26 steps.
There's a nurse, family nurse, right over there. Third plot over. It's family nurse. I think her first name is Eve.
Family nurse down that way.
Never heard of her.
The pretty girl says, "Here, take a bite of this apple. Nothing's gonna happen.
Uh-huh.
Don't listen." Don't listen. Yeah, she's right down there. His family's name is Eva Losee, L-O-S-E-E, or Losee. Anyway, okay, here he is here.
Yep,
And
we
this is,
got our.
You've been here before?
Well, we had just stepped up. This is our first time today, so
Okay.
we had just been up earlier before we took a little break.
Oh,
Right.
Famous saying, and this is how I explain it to the students, is that you can use the analogy of baseball. You get up 4 times in a game, and you try to get a hit each time you get up. But if you get even 2 hits out of 4, that's major league caliber, so you'd be satisfied with your effort. But also use reason and logic. So that's what he meant by that.
Mhm.
And he was very big into everything. He was first president of the historical. Here he is here. This is from the he's third on the left. He's on the right. The man tailed him for 8 states until they got to Wisconsin, 1912, where there was no death penalty. His name was John Shank. And he trailed him. And just when TR was in the car, this man shot him right here. TR was blind in the left eye.
Mhm.
So if you close your left eye, you'll see that you can't really see anything. So you look at all the photographs of TR after 1900, his left hand is either in his pocket or clenched, because he didn't want to react to anybody. You know how politicians sometimes go like that? Well, he didn't do that, and it saved his life. So, what saved his life also was a man by the name of Albert Martin. He jumped out of the
I think
out of
that
the
was
car
when he
and
was.
tackled.
I think it was when he was boxing. He became blind. He got.
Well, he always had a bad eyes anyway. It was a combination of things in the White House. But what's so interesting is that years before, about 10 years before, in Sagamore Hill, he held a meeting, TR, with some of the Ivy League coaches. Football was so dangerous. And he had a meeting. He said you have to have better equipment, helmets, shoulder pads, get rid of this flying wedge and everything else. TR Jr. had been knocked out twice, right? The man that saved his life 10 years later, his name was Albert Martin, was an ex-football player. Isn't that a nice story?
Yeah.
You heard it here. Because as a teacher, I used to always try to find these little stories that you know.
Mm-hmm. Makes nice
Okay?
connections.
Okay. So let me open this up.
Hold this.
And, you can-
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you very
I'll
much.
tell you a nice story about the Congressional Medal of Honor and why it took 10 years for him to get that, 100 years for him to get that. Go ahead up. You can photograph each other.
Okay.
Wow.
You're correct.
I've looked on the websites.
Yeah.
And all the guys who have been to his grave,
Right.
none has been inside. They've all been outside.
They all have the
Well,
shot
he was the
outside the
first president in an airplane, first in the automobile, and first down in the submarine. So now you're the first in his
I think
gravesite.
McKinley was the first in an automobile.
No, because McKinley
Then
was
what was
shot.
he taken to the hospital in?
Well, we had heard that he was taken to the hospital in a motorized vehicle, so we'll have to research that.
Well, we'll check that one. Yeah.
I'll have to check that.
Wasn't willingly.
Because we always say,
Yeah, right.
you know, no, we always say like, I hope he didn't like it much. Because hey, this is great. I'm gonna do this again, and then that could have been. So we'll have to do more research on that.
A little more research.
In
on
a submarine also.
that. Yes, down here, right off of here. And that was during the Russian and Japanese negotiations. Incredible.
Okay.
His mind can be focused like that. He went down for 3 hours into this ship called the Plunger. And it was very dangerous in those days. In fact, when he got out, the first thing he did was he authorized a raise and pay, a hazard pay for submarines.
You know, it's good that he could appreciate the work the men did and see.
Yes,
Right.
ahead of the time.
Don't just a finger. That's it.
Okay, that flag, that little flag symbolizes the Congressional Medal of Honor. And
blue flag.
It took 100 years for him to get that.
Now, what was that for?
Well, the leaf is from the people of France after Quentin was shot down. That little wreath in the center is from the Legion, and the flowers on the right. Every so often during the course of the year, I get some women come up. One is a Gold Star mother. She lost a son in the military, and she always felt that the TR understands what she's going through. So once a year, she drops off flowers, yellow rose. Another woman drops off flowers. She won't tell me why, and she drops off flowers every so often as well.
But a Gold Star, I naturally think of World War II, though.
Gold Star, yeah.
But she's
That's
still,
what it was. And she still comes here.
she's
very
still
often.
alive. Wow.
Yes, yes. And
She must be-
is
Who does?
Now, the story with the Congressional Medal of Honor is interesting because he was, the war was over. It was a 113-day war. Some 8,000 were dead. And his commanding officer was also a doctor, Dr. Leonard Wood. And he says, T.R., we have to get out of here. This is yellow fever season and malaria and everything else. T.R. went to President McKinley. McKinley said, no, you have to stay as an occupying force. Leonard Wood shook his head. T.R. went to the media. So the media made a big noise about it. So T.R. was allowed to bring his 15,000 troops to Montauk, and McKinley shafted him for that and didn't give him the medal. So it took us 100 years for him to get the medal. So I like to tell people that he won the medal for saving lives. I'll tell you a nice story about T.R.
All right, Craig, I'll tell you what, Craig. Go. I want you to get up near the tombstone one more time. Then I'm going to switch over to the other camera and get your picture. All right, there you go. Very good.
Comes here every so often.
Okay. Very good.
This is the north end here, North Shore, and we're about here, and this is Riverhead. So when the glacier went this far down and pulled back, it left all these hills and all these stones pressed together.
Yeah.
So that's from the glacier. So I'm sure that you have those up there too, right? If not, I'll give you one down below.
I don't think we have.
If you stay with the group. This is
Keep moving.
This is the chaplain. This is the chaplain who was with T.R. down in Cuba. You see, Cuba. He's here with his wife, D.D., Doctor of Divinity. He's also helping in the Philippine problem later on that T.R. inherited. And this is a nice stone here on the far left. T.R. was a Mason. He'd go to meetings in the local building, and so whenever he had a chance to go, and this man was most worshipful master, and he would say, Brother Theodore, come up front. And T.R. would say, no, here I'm just a member. T.R. was president of the United States, and this man was the gardener for the Townsend family. And that's how he was, very democratic.
Very nice.
A little wet back here, but
Yeah, I think we can brave it.
yeah, we can survive. Townsend clan goes way back. They arrived in the country in about 1660s.
Sure.
And he's not here, his parents are here, but he's in a small grave in town that I can see. In the wintertime, there was several spy rings in this area. One was the Culper spy ring. Robert Townsend was in charge of that one, and he's directly related to these people. He's in town. They didn't know about him until the 1920s. With spies, the war's never over. The other side hates you. And they kept it a secret. A man was on his trail, a writer, and he found some notes and things, and he compared it, and he says definitely it was Robert Townsend who was Culper Jr. When Washington made his famous 1790 tour of this area, he stopped across the street, where on February 22nd, 1766, Sammy Adams came down here and organized his Sons of Liberty chapter. So there were several spies here, and he was one of them, and so on. And also a sergeant in the British Navy who was on our side. These are all Roosevelts back here.
All so very prominent and very large family.
Yes. And these are different people with a lot of history. Now, this is Ethel. Ethel I knew.
Oh, you knew Ethel.
Ethel lived in town. She's a nice story there. One of my daughters used to babysit for a young girl up my street, and then they moved down to her house after she died. And that young girl later on married a man called Seinfeld on television. That little statement on the end. And all the trumpets sounded on the other side is from Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. That was their favorite book poem, The Father and the Daughter. They used to recite that among other poems. He'd come down the hall, he'd be finishing wrestling with Quentin and Archie, and then he'd tuck in his shirt, fix his glasses, and she wanted to wrestle with him too. He wouldn't do it. He would only recite. And then he would leave, and sometimes she'd go back and give them what for. They lost a son, about 8 years old. Many families lost young people in those days. We would have lost our first 3 or 4 in the 60s, but the same kind of intestinal. But they could isolate the virus in those days and just starve it. Married a doctor. She was in the Red Cross almost 70 years. Very interesting here. These are stones in memory of, but the wives. So you have T.R. Jr. and his son, Quentin. This is Quentin II. They were both on Normandy for the liberation of Europe, Omaha and Utah. He was the oldest general there. He was in the first leading landing barge. He was close to 57, twice the age of the average doughboy. What is so interesting was
So he died there.
yes, just a couple of weeks later. What is so interesting is in his book he relates how when he would visit his dad would stop every so often, scratch in the dirt. It's a military strategy that this or that general either did or didn't do. Years later on Normandy, he was in the first landing barge, and he immediately found out, he knew that they were not on the beach that was softened up. He led his 600 men to safety, went back and stayed on that beach all day. There was some 20,000 troops landing, only about 80 or 90 died, and he was the one that was responsible all day with his arthritic hip, bad eyes, just a 45, a cane. He kept directing people to safety. Incredible. General Omar Bradley said it was the bravest thing he ever saw. And yet they both suffered from a censorship order issued by FDR through the State Department in February of 1942, when it was stated to all the media, don't report any of the activities for the remainder of the war. T.R. Jr., his son Quentin, and they threw in Henry Wallace Jr. Wallace was the VP. And nobody cared about Henry Wallace, but this way they made it look bipartisan. So for all during World War II, nobody knew how great and famous. He won every medal that the U.S. Army has. So I like to say with the Congressional Medal of Honor, which was awarded after he died, like his father, he got that medal for saving lives. And it's kind of like, if you can use as an analogy, the Congressional Medal of Honor is like somebody in a World Series game hitting 4 Grand Slam home runs, right? But all the while, there's people in the stands shooting at them. It's a very difficult.
I think after World War II, I think there was like decades before one was awarded again, if I recall.
Yeah, very few.
Very few.
And what's so ironic, he died on July 12, which is the anniversary of the founding of the Congressional Medal in 1862, July 12. His wife is here. Quentin II also fought with his father against the Germans in North Africa. This is the family motto, he who plants preserves. And he stayed behind. He had a wife and 3 daughters, and he was helping Chiang Kai-shek's forces, and it appears as if this plane was sabotaged. And he's buried off of Hong Kong. Frances, she's a fellow artist like myself. 3 daughters. One was married to the governor, former governor of Massachusetts, well. And she put these in just a month before she died, on September 11, 1995. Okay.
Now, where's the first Quentin buried?
The first Quentin is next to T.R. Jr. in France, in the cemetery in France. The same cemetery as mentioned right there.
So he had two sons named Quentin?
Well, he had one. Then he had a grandson.
Grandson.
Oh,
So the grandson is grandson. This is sad over here. You have, I'm going to give you one of my teen creeds. I used to use this in all my classes, give some good advice about respect for parents and values and culture and driving and peer pressure. These are three brothers. And it's sad. These first two I know definitely. At different times, they died. 19, 20, 21 years old, but these two died of automobile accidents. Very sad. Very sad. The slabs, they tell me, were from posts up in the estate, up in the Massachusetts area. And if you look at the dates, born 65, died in 86. This, but every spring and summer, early summer, the kids, my school, they have trees they plant, like a forest. And Simon, he died a year after he got married. I'm not sure, I can't find. That looks like a Shakespearean quote down below. Yeah, such as dreams are made of.
Sounds like it.
That's Palfrey on the far right. He was Dean of Columbia University, roommate of John Kennedy in Harvard. When Kennedy became president, he appointed that man chief of the Atomic Energy Commission. A lot of history up here. He married one of Archie's daughters, so that's the family.
I
I
think
married a poor Irish girl, so I'll be lucky if I get married.
that Roosevelt had a brother.
World War II again. They had the Nuremberg trials after World War II, crimes against humanity type stuff, and his father was Chief Justice, who was there, and this is his son, William Jackson Jr., just out of the Navy. He was a law clerk, so his father asked him to be part of it. You know, he had 5 daughters, just like my wife and I, only he named his daughters all with the first letter M, Martha, Melissa, Miranda, and the wife's first name was Nancy. It took the girls 3 or 4 years to come out with a statement, which is clear to some people and ambiguous to others. But, so he's here. This is Kermit. Kermit I never knew, but I think he was probably the most intellectual of the kids. Wrote a lot of books, very deep. He was a writer, a poet, very brave man. Fought on the British command in the First World War. World War II, he was up in Alaska on bombing raids over Japan. And he always had bleeding ulcers. They were going to discharge him, 100% disability, begged to go back on duty. A month later, they found him dead. So not sure. It depends on which book you read. Either murder, committed suicide, or natural causes. He saved his father's life in 1914 in South America. His father was very sick and ill. Nice stories. This is what I tell us. I told the students this story last October when they come up. They all gather around the outside of the enclosure. About 200 locusts. I got some off in there. Maybe you can spray on your.
Don't worry about it.
He had lost 60 pounds, TR, and he asked the doctor. He says he was coming home on the Long Island. He says, He said, I feel faint. He said, can you bring me some water? So TR goes in the back, and he sits down, and the doctor comes in and gives TR some water, and he starts sipping it, and then TR hears a whimper in the corner. There was a little puppy in the cage. TR takes another set down to half, and he goes over to the cage, and he gives it to the little puppy. So TR shared his water. One of his sons just died, Kermit, who was very involved with the Shah of Iran, and he died just a couple of years ago. He was first in the OSS and then in CIA. One of his other sons, though, died young. Born in 25, died in 53, a year after I graduated from school. This is Archie. Archie I knew. Archie lived just down the street. And so you never know about children in health. He was very sickly when he was young. They thought they lost him a couple of times. He saved a young boy's eyesight one time playing a game, and he took him right to the doctor when nobody else would. And yet he lived second longest. He was wounded in the leg and arm, First World War, 100% disability, pulled some strings in the Second World War, over 50, went to the South Pacific, was working against the Japanese over there on our side, saved an island, but was wounded again. So as far as we know, the only man, total disability in 2 world wars. I have letters from him. Grace died in an unfortunate auto accident. Archie Jr. was also in intelligence work. He also wrote a book. And his wife, Selwa, was chief of protocol for President Reagan. Now I'll give you some sketches. Sketches and stuff. This is TR as a knight, and this is one of his statements. Somebody take that. Yeah. Down this way, right? All the way down to the fence. I didn't know who it was. Obviously a kid was jumping over. Several years later, I got a report that a young man died, and the mother asked to plant his ashes where that Asian dogwood is right down there past the bench about 20 feet down. I met her. It was the boy. He had grown up, and he went down to Florida. He had made an accident. He had caused the accident, the death of his best friend. He never got over that, and a few years later he OD'd. I spoke to the mother, and she says how sad that he made one mistake over another, and she says, Nick, those years of him coming here into the twilight were the happiest times of his life. So I like to tell the students, the teens, that we all make mistakes. So what? You make a mistake, try not to make it again, but don't compound it by making other mistakes. It was, I was back in '51. I was out for track. I was pretty good. And a man came to me as a student. He was a year old. He's going to graduate. He says, Nick, I'm going to graduate in a couple of months. I don't have anything. No track letter, no varsity letter. And I said, well, what do you want from me? He said, I'm going to try out for track. I said, what can you do? He said, I don't know. I said, well, try the mile. So I'd go with him a little bit. You know, I didn't know that much, but I would go with him and help him. Both coaches, the track coach and the main coach, said they shook their head nothing. All year he ran. The best he could do was third. Never took second or much as first. But he won enough points for his track letter. A year later, I found out later, he went to Korea, walked on the landmine, lost the working flexibility of both of his legs. About 7 years ago, I went to his mother's funeral, and I felt a tap. Mr. Trackman, I heard the words, there he was. I hadn't seen him in all those years. We chatted, and he got up and he walked kind of rough away. And his wife says, are you Nick LaBella? And she told me the story about the track. She knew about that. She says, he loves that letter more than anything. And then she told me about what happened to him. A couple of weeks ago, I found out that he died, and I met his sister. And she says how it was so crowded at his funeral. He used to help for 50 years, he'd help all the other veterans who were severely hurt in different wars and stuff. And so I told her the story about the track letter. She didn't know that, but she says that now it makes sense. She says in his will, it says, please don't worry about the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart. Just exhibit my track letter. So I like to tell the students now that our lives are not parallel like this all the time. We hit other people's lives and we don't know, for good or bad, it comes back. So try to do good. Okay?
Good advice.
This is, I'll walk you down so you know about the 26 steps.
Right. And you made a killing there, $1 a step.
$1. I made a killing that summer. They saw me coming. And these boulders, they say, are from the Lincoln Tunnel.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's the natural amphitheater where we used to always have our scouts meetings. We'd march up, meet here, representatives would go up to the gravesite and leave a wreath. The flag is from the USS TR. On the other side are ashes. There's a woman that I met. She had she asked to buy a little niche for her son. We put him in there. He was a doctor. She died a couple of years later at the service. I met the two daughters, and they told me he never really practiced. He studied for all these years to be a doctor, went to medical school, then caught a rare disease. She took care of him for 15 years. Yeah, mother love.
Are there any plots left here? Or are there also...
Not really. There's one to the right of that flag, the top cross, is called Tang, but the son of that man bought into that for $30,000. So if you're interested, put some small bills in a paper bag and we'll talk about it. This is
30.
This is the remnants of a tiger lily. This goes back thousands of years, at least 5,000. There's representations of the tiger lily in the pyramids in Egypt. Here's some botany now. There's the stalk of a mulehine shrub, that one there, and there's a full one. You see it down here just to the right. Pilgrims brought that over 500 years ago, and they used the leaves for inside their boots to comfort their feet. They churn up certain parts of the plant for indigestion, and they use the stalk for torches at night.
Interesting.
Interesting.
It looks like kind of a real woody stalk.
Yeah, it is. It is. These
They
are.
don't need any more torches.
No
I
more.
have enough.
Do you have enough?
Just,
Oh yeah.
just as one Statue of Liberty today.
That's this row here. We've got three. If you're from the south, to be polite, I'll call it the War of Northern Aggression. We call it up here the Civil War. I like to call it the Planters' War. They're the only one that had the slaves, but there's three here. One was in the Harris Light Cavalry. It was connected with Custer. Custer was heading for Gettysburg, and he cut off and he beat Jeb Stuart. So Jeb Stuart, who was going to be the left-hand man for Lee, was whooped by Custer, and this man was part of it, and that helped save Gettysburg.
Well, I guess we call it the Civil War.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. This is, he's a former governor of Nevada. Next to him is a son who was a 49er. Look, he died of typhoid, and on his stone it says died in Sacramento City. Right here. That flag on the upper, on the grassy knoll, is the man that lived in that house in a young family. He was a double agent for outside, and he gave secrets to Washington. So Washington, that's a genuine Washington. He slept here.
I've got a question. I noticed how some of the graves up there that are pretty old are still very legible, where these don't appear that way. What's the difference in...
It depends on the stone. It depends. Actually, it's weird here with the weather. Certain sections, cold blasts come right up. Other sections, it's not that bad.
Oh, so it has
Hurricanes.
to do with the weather versus the type of stone
And the
it's
type of
made
stone.
of?
Well, no,
And the
both.
type.
Right.
Yeah,
Both. Some are more durable.
That obelisk is pretty much where Tom is. So he came over here around the 1840s.
Tom
We
who?
have Young. We have Jamestown, 1607. Plymouth, 1620. So this is in that same generation. They say Captain Kidd was around here. We have the crosses with slaves, former slaves. The North outlawed the importation of slaves 1808. Total 1827. So those that stayed with the family became servants and they were buried with the family. So within 100 yards of
And
TR.
now, kicking around here, Nick, you haven't found Captain Kidd's treasure, have you?
I've been looking, I've been digging.
You've been digging?
I've been
Well,
digging,
you have a good
yeah. Found a
excuse,
couple of
right?
rocks.
Somebody
Yes.
sees you around here with a spade, it's like, no one's going to ask you a question.
That's right. A beautiful copper beech tree. That big one up there. You have to come in here in the fall and help me rake. Beautiful. It just turns lusty. And I'll give you a nice example down
Maybe
below.
they should cut down that tree so it doesn't fall on the grave.
Well, it's been cabled up above. It's split this way, but there's cables that help.
You mean for this one that's...
The one that's a little...
Which one?
No, he's
No,
talking
that's
about...
one
That was before my time. That's a cedar.
Yeah, I think he's talking about that one.
Yeah,
Looks like it's going to
that's cedar.
fall.
That was in there before my time,
Yeah.
and that's very hard. You put your knuckles next to that. It's like,
Yeah,
it's
that's
like hitting
got a little
concrete.
lean.
Very difficult.
Well, I don't know about helping you rake, but I might send you a leaf blower.
Okay, okay. I'll show you a nice example, a poor example of function and form in architecture that I can fight it. It's part of that TR on the horse bit. So you see it goes way back.
Okay, Young's Memorial Cemetery.
So this
Young.
is private property. This was a family burial of a family. And then as others came in, people downtown, and then they just bought into it. And the Roosevelt clan bought into it about the 1890s. Now this is interesting. In architecture, you have a credo called function and form. Function is first. You see over here. That island separates in the center. That is a left-hand turn to a Northern Boulevard, right?
Okay.
It's too short. Trucks coming from there have difficulty making that turn. They were going over the sidewalk up to the bank.
Jeez.
We have hundreds of kids use this every week, right? Buses and whatever.
Not good.
So I went to I called up the mayor, Kovnak. I said, can't you lower that thing, make it shorter or change? He said, no. I went to the town board. I gave a talk about form and function and stupidity and danger. We'll think about it. Finally, I put all kinds of junk here, and I got that little bit of a humble railing. It's not as strong as the one that I wanted. The one I wanted is down by that beach. You see that
Yeah,
sign
yeah,
down
yeah.
there with concrete?
Oh, yeah,
It says
concrete.
landing.
Yeah.
That's strong. But it's something anyway. So there's a perfect example of form and function, and they pick